traveling around the world literally, and I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about AI culture. And in particular, what does it take for an organization to be what I call AI ready? And I've been talking to a lot of organizations. And again, I just recently came from a lot of travels overseas. I was in London and Singapore, and got to meet with a lot of different companies talking about what it looks like to have AI adoption, but I also call it AI adaption. So, how does your organization need to adapt in order to take full advantage and create value with AI? So, today I would love to hear from you from wherever you're joining. Please say hello. I would love to hear from people, and also just share how you're preparing your organization culture for AI. And in particular, like, what are you doing? How are you thinking about what your culture looks like? What are the things that are working? And also, just what are the things that aren't working that you want to address with AI? So, I have some slides here today too, as well, which I'll just share here. One of the things I really wanted to do today was to share a model. I shared this earlier this year, back I think in April or so, and one of the things that we've done is refined it, and we're about ready to publish a book. Katja Welsh and I are about ready to publish the book, Winning with AI. And it was very excited to just share some of the finished frameworks with you. So let me get into it here today. Here we go. Here are the slides. Let me just dive right into this. Okay, so when you think about culture, one of the most things that I hear over and over again, and the reason why I am so focused on culture around any sort of change and transformation, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast every single day. And what I mean by that is, you could have the most beautiful strategy, but if your culture isn't well tuned to be able to execute on that strategy, it's going to just be just your strategy will not get executed. And so this is the reality, that our cultures tend to be these really big amorphous things that are very difficult to change. But I know from experience, because I've helped organizations change their culture. I worked with one very large multinational energy company, over 100 years old, very fixed in the way that they have a certain way of doing things. And they said, we need to change our culture because we're used to digging things out of the ground and finding markets for them. Now we need to figure out what the markets want and build them. It's a completely different way of operating. They had to change their entire strategy to meet the energy realities of today's world. And they go, we don't have a culture to match that. So how do we do this? And they systematically changed it because, again, a very competent organization figured out these are the ways to be able to change it. And so when it comes to I believe it's yet just another change and transformation. But I think there are certain things about AI that we need to understand that are very unique to it. And therefore, we require certain culture traits to come up and be more closer to the surface. So today I'm going to go and talk about what those culture things are, but I want to talk about why traditional change management just doesn't work with AI. First of all, usually change management assumes that there's a fixed future that you are changing to. With AI, we don't know what that future looks like, and it's just going to continuously change. So I wish we could create, like, okay, this is what the future looks like. This is the change we have to create. So these are the steps to create that change and to manage that change. Doesn't work that way with AI. It's also really tough because other types of change, like this is how you use this new technology, or this is a new process we're working with. AI messes with our identities, and especially our existential questions of how is it that we create value. And so therefore it's really it really triggers a lot of resistance from people. And in particular, there's all this uncertainty, and the pace at which it's happening just adds on top of it just this tremendous sense of overwhelm. And then when that happens, people just want to sit down and just like not move. They're like, we're looking for some sources of stability. And even though I may not like the way things are today, I wish things could be better. It's better than that over there with all the AI and changes. And the reality is, we're facing a lot of change fatigue in our organizations and in our society today. And that comes when we want to make change, but it doesn't ever come to fruition, either because of lack of resources and attention, or it's just a constant barrage of things that we never get a chance to actually realize, oh, we've done a change. Yay, let's enjoy this for a little bit. And then also, I oftentimes hear from organizations, and Katja in particular, my co-author says this quite a bit, that alignment is code for resistance. If people say, well, we got to slow down and make sure there's alignment, it means that there are people who don't agree, so we need to bring them to the table. That doesn't work, because when it comes to these types of changes, it's going to be very difficult to get alignment and consensus. And therefore, it's just another way to build up resistance to that change. So, a couple of things that I think is so important to have. Let me see. I just have a couple comments here. Let's see. We have Jay Johnson saying an essential element of AI culture is communication. Is that not included in your top five? Actually, I'll talk about that in just a second. I would say that communication is not so much a trait as it is a behavior and action you have to take. Communication across the board is extremely important, and it's one of the ways that we talk about AI and culture change. I don't touch on it so much today. I will talk about it next week when we talk about leadership and the importance of communication. But Jay, you're absolutely right. And then trust, absolutely, is dependent on open and unhindered communication. It's always been the case, always will be when it comes to culture and leadership. All right. Oh, and Lynn has a great comment here. Culture changes anytime you help people think and act differently. I love that definition. Customer intelligence trends are especially powerful in grabbing attention, mostly when the insights and patterns reveal budget expansion opportunities. That's personal and motivating to everyone because of finite resources. We'll talk about that very specific thing about budgets. But hold on to that point about customer intelligence, because I think that is the foundation for, again, having an AI-ready culture. So then you're previewing some of my content that's coming up here. So thank you for bringing that up. All right, let me get back to the slides here. And let me just go on and just talk about the first trait, which is speed. And I love this quote from our friend Vikram Mohidar, that speed is the new moat. It is the way that you create competitive advantage. And it is the very first trait that we talk about in our 5 traits. And the idea here is that you have to be as agile as possible. And you really want to be able to just move extremely quickly. So let me just give you some insights into what that looks like. There are 3 very specific behaviors when it comes to speed. The first one is choosing to just constantly iterate over trying to be perfect. Again, I think we all know this. If you're listening to this live stream, you already know this, that, perfection, trying to do too much analysis, trying to get to the absolute right answer to be 100% sure just doesn't work, because getting to perfection, having all the answers just isn't possible before you have to make a decision. And I like to say that the decisions need to be made with what I call minimally viable data. How much information do you need to have? Well, what's the minimum information you need to make a decision? Your MVD, minimum viable data, to be able to just hold together like a minimally viable product for you to be able to make a decision. Once you have that data, then make that decision, because that will put you into a different place that allows you to evaluate, was that right? Was that wrong? And then come back and make a different decision if it was not right. And again, this going back to trust, what Jay Johnson was talking about, empowering people by trusting them to make sensible choices. And as I go through these 5 traits, you'll see that they are actually overlapping with each other. And this one in particular, you're trusting them because they're aligned around the same strategy, the values, the purpose, the missions that you have, so that if you work really hard on those areas and make sure those are very solid in your culture and your organization, then trust can evolve, because you're confident that people understand what does it mean to make good choices and good decisions. So let me move on to the next thing. And it's really about focus, because the good thing about AI is that you can do so much with it. The bad thing about AI is that you can do so much with it. So I think this leads to, again, the second area, which is focus. And in particular, the idea that you really need to avoid having distractions and adhere to a very clear strategy and roadmap. And also, I'll talk about this about tapping existing resources. So let me just go into this a little bit. First of all, you want to make sure that AI is directed to the most strategic, most important organizational priorities. And again, it's not trying to do everything under the sun. And I think these long lists of use cases for AI doesn't help anybody. We know we need to prioritize them, but how do you prioritize them? And so focus is the goal and the outcome of that prioritization process. And the thing about reusing and tapping into existing budgets is that it forces you to make choices, and focus is about making choices. So this is not about treating AI as a separate project. It's in service of a strategic objective. It's aligned with existing projects that could be there. Now, we may be uh, pushing some fine points here, but whether it's a separate project or not, but the idea is that it's coming under the umbrella of an existing strategic priority that you have. It may be a separate initiative, it may have some budgets within this. But the reason you want to think about using existing budgets is that it forces you to say, what are we going to stop doing? So having mechanisms to say, because you don't have infinite budgets, you don't have infinite people, you don't have infinite time and resources. So if you are going to tackle AI, what are you not going to do? Because this mythical belief that, oh, I can just put this on a side of the desk effort, we can just find some additional time. It doesn't work. And I think the discipline of focus also means saying, here's our existing budget. We can always expand the budget, but within that budget, within the people we have, within the resources we can hire more people, we can put more resources against us. But within that budget, what does it look like? Because it is finite, it is not infinite. So focus requires making choices. And in particular, I love the 6 quarter walk and some sort of roadmap that lays out this is what we're going to do with AI and which time frame and the value we're going to create. And that creates clarity. It creates focus across the organization. This is what we're going to do. Anything not on this roadmap, we are not going to do. Now, every quarter, we have the opportunity to go back in our quarterly reviews and say, should we be changing this roadmap? Things may have changed. Our priorities may have changed. Resources may have been freed up. But again, it's a roadmap that everyone can see and it's updated on a quarterly basis. All right, let's go on to the next area, which is continuous reinvention. And this is a culture trait I find in organizations that constantly ask why. Or the corollary to that is they ask, why not? So, why don't we do things this way? Or why do we do things this way? And if you get the answer back, well, that's the way we always done things around here. That's not acceptable because you're not testing the assumptions to say, well, why did we begin doing this way? The underlying assumptions and testing those assumptions to see if they hold true is a really good discipline. So it's constantly iterating, constantly improving. So a couple of things of what that means is to constantly challenge assumptions. Like, okay, let's just check and see if those assumptions are right. It's not to say they're wrong, but are they still right? And it's also being able to reveal inconsistencies between what we expect and what we say we do and what we actually do. So, for example, if we say these are the things that we do to make sure we put our customers first, do we actually do that in our customer journeys? And you can use AI to do some of that analysis to just give you a map of what those look like. Then we find the metrics, and this is the thing that most or many organizations fall into. These are the metrics we have always used to measure our success, but we may have measured them because, well, they were available in the dashboards that were given to us with our tools, or they're easily accessible. But do they actually tell us if value is being created? How we're moving in the direction of that? And so, for example, We could have some predictive customer satisfaction indicators using, again, AI, that we can correlate, that these indicators correlate with customer satisfaction versus counting how many lagging complaints we have and the volume of them, they going up or down. Again, that's a lagging indicator versus a predictive indicator. So take a look at your metrics and say, could we be doing a better job of, and we can always do a better job, but in particular, the ways that we're defining success and measuring success, could we do a better job of doing that? All right, just want to take a quick look at some of the comments that are over here. Let's see. Again, another great point from Lynn. Culture changes anytime you help. Oh, we did this one already. Okay, we did that one. Jay, how about creating an AI community that incorporates different speeds, diversity, and broader stakeholder participation? That's something that we're seeing some organizations do. Actually, they're creating these groups that take into account the different ways that people are adopting AI. So, for example, I know one organization that has training for people who are just skeptical about AI. They're just like, this. I don't make me go near it. I'd rather it's just like go stand in the corner someplace and have to do this. So again, there's a lot of fear and resistance, and the realization of this organization is that they can't learn how to use AI while they're so afraid of it. And so the training is really take into account where people are coming from, where their starting points are, rather than assuming everybody's going to learn AI and it's going to be just an hour-long training and it's going to work. So I think that is a really good idea to make sure that again, that you are taking into account where people are coming from, that we come from very different, diverse backgrounds, experiences. Um, let's see. We have this question from Alex. It's a great one. How can organizations balance the need for speed in AI adoption with the discipline of focus to avoid wasted investments? Great question, Alex. I think this goes back to, again, speed without that focus. Again, this interconnection between the two won't make sense because you need to focus on the most strategic things that need to get done. I talk about prioritization, and one of the ways is to do what we use the double S matrix. So size of the value and then the speed to the value. So you prioritize based on those two things. And it's really about the value. So to avoid the wasted investments, it's to understand which of these things are going to have the biggest impact on the outcomes of our organization. So how is it going to create the most value? The things that I oftentimes see happening is, let's go do the AI that's the least amount of effort, that has the least amount of risk. And that's not going to get a lot of traction or have a lot of impact because people are just doing what's easy versus what is most valuable. So, most valuable may not be the easiest, it may not be the simplest, but it will be worth the effort because it is going to create a tremendous amount of value against one of your existing strategic objectives. All right, let me go on and just share a couple more things and then we can take a couple more questions. All right. The next one is around lifelong learning. And this is, again, a particular characteristic of AI. It is constantly changing. The new things that keep coming out, the new photo editing tools, and new ways to create AI agents. I mean, it just keeps accelerating. So our learning needs to continuously be upgraded. It is not anywhere near a one and done. So, a couple ways to do this to build, again, an environment inside your organization for lifelong learning. The first one is you have to normalize not knowing. You put such a premium on people having the answers to be sure, like to be confident, like, I know what the answer is. Let's go. Here's the solution. And this in particular comes down to leaders modeling things like, I don't understand this yet. But even though we don't have a full understanding, we're going to go around and muck in it for a little while. Or help me learn this. Like, you all know how to use these things. Show me how to do it. And it makes it normal. It normalizes learning. It normalizes not knowing. It encourages people to step forward no matter what their rank is inside the organization to say, I don't have all the answers. And that can be particularly difficult for leaders. But if it's hard for leaders, you can imagine their employees and team members are not going to admit that they don't know either. So if the other thing is to add reflection times into the work rhythms that you have to make learning and especially reflection a habit. And so building them into debriefs at the end of projects. I think many people do these now. They do a sort of post-mortem, but more importantly, just do this as part of the things that you do as a one-on-one, and you do the end of day, end of week reviews each month with your team. Whatever you can do to make sure that you're practicing learning and reflections. Reward curiosity over certainty. This is something that I saw one organization do. They put into the promotion criteria at the end of each quarter a review with their leaders and managers to say, well, how did you learn things? How did you do things differently? How are you advancing your development as a person? And they had to document that. And that if they could demonstrate they were doing this constantly, that was a criteria for them being promoted to the next level. And then finally, connect all the learning that you do back to the purpose, back to the idea that you are doing meaningful work. All right. Just speeding along here, let's talk about customer centricity. So, Lynn, this is your section here, and in particular, it's about making sure that we are constantly thinking about our customers. So, one of the things is to make sure that your customer journeys are going across all the various departments in the organization. So, in particular with AI, there's a tendency to say, well, marketing has their AI tools, and sales has their AI tools, and customer service over here has their tools. Make sure these tools are connecting with each other, using the same data, getting the same insights, and that you're sharing them and collaborating across the organization to have the most up-to-date, rich profile and understanding of what's happening with your customers. Make sure the metrics are all tied together to the same metrics of customer success. This is still an issue in so many companies. And then also making sure that these cross-departmental collaboration, I call them walkways between the silos, are available and available for people to use. Okay, just one very important thing. I'm going to go into this one area, and we'll talk more about this next week when we talk about leadership. But the one thing that is needed to create this change inside of organizations is the CEO mandate. Now, we've talked about this in the past. Companies like Shopify, Duolingo, Box even found a Norwegian sovereign wealth fund where the CEO has said, we are going to become AI ready. Everyone is expected to use AI. We're going to support you, give you lots of tools and training, and everyone is going to learn AI. It's kind of like saying everyone's going to use email, everyone's going to use Google. We're going to give you training on how to do these things. And I think, again, the CEO mandate is so important because it creates some urgency. It signals that the organization is committed to being AI ready, and is also giving, very importantly, giving employees the permission to take time to learn new ways of learning and of working. And so there are three elements of the CEO mandate that are absolutely essential. The first one is that this imperative is what is used to drive adoption and AI fluency. The second is that there's an enforcement, that there are performance mechanisms built into creating that AI fluency. So I talk about timelines. So by X time, everyone's going to be trained and you'll be using these tools. And the second one is just defining, what does it look like? What does good look like? What does it mean to be AI fluent in your organization? And that's going to look different by organization and also by role. And then setting very clear expectations of what that means. Again, it's one thing to say we're going to be AI ready. Well, what does that mean? And in what time frame? So being explicit and very detailed when you're putting out these things, and again, being clear about what kind of culture you want to build is a key part of success for building AI ready organizations. And I just love this slide, so I figured I'd just put it in that I wish this was a nice, easy formula. Like, here you go. Here's the recipe. Here are the ingredients. Follow these steps, stir, mix, bake, and you'll be done. That's not the way it works. These are the 5 traits that we have seen in organizations that work that are really adopting AI and doing really well. They have speed, they have focus, they have that continuous improvement mindset, they're continuously learning, and they again have strong customer centricity. These 5 traits, we believe, are the things that are very unique to organizations. Some of them may have been around for a long time, like customer centricity and continuous improvement. But I think in the context of AI, it really makes a big difference. All right, let's see. Here's Lynn. It's just voting again for prioritizing by paying to customers. Their prosperity is the best path to investor prosperity. I love that point very much. Thank you so much for doing that. And then Alex says, really appreciate the emphasis on continuous reinvention, not one-time deployment. So fantastic. That's what I have for today. Next week, I'll be back again, same time and place, Tuesday at 9 o'clock on October 7th, and we'll be discussing how leadership changes with AI. And in particular, what are the challenges to leadership? And there are so many. There are some timeless qualities of leadership, but there are also some very unique ways that leadership is changing. And I'll talk very specifically about how AI can help you be a better leader, a wiser leader. So until then, good luck. I'd love to hear from you about anything that you're working on, but especially this week, if you are making any changes to your culture, something I'm very much focused on, or if you have questions for next week's live stream, send them to me. Yeah, I read all the channels, and you can find me at my email, find me on LinkedIn and other places, social media, and please stay in touch. All right, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week.